Hello friends, welcome to this special video which is a part of our series on the EB5 visa. We have been doing a number of videos on EB5 visa and trying to educate our audience on the developments on this front. I'm Paresh Karia, CEO of Acquest Advisors. We are an immigration advisory firm based out of Mumbai, specializing in investment and business immigration to US, Canada, Europe and UK. And today we are privileged to have with us a very special guest, Mr. Niral Patel, who is an acclaimed EB5 attorney working with KLD law firm in the US. So Niral, welcome to our office over here in Mumbai. We are really privileged to have you.
Thank you so much. I'm a partner at KLD. We're a full service immigration firm with offices in California, New York and Miami. My family's originally from India. I was actually born in the UK and I live and work in the US as an attorney on a green card myself, and now I practice EB5.
So Niral, EB5 is back in its new avatar, and there have been a number of changes which have taken place in the new law. Can you tell us what is the biggest change and what is the benefits?
Absolutely. So, just to give you a brief history, the biggest issue with EB5 prior to the May 2020 integrity rule is processing times.
Right.
Before, someone who wanted to get a green card had to wait at least 2 to 3 years before they could get their I-526 approved,
Right.
and only then could they apply for the green card benefits like an EAD or an AP, which is the employment authorization or advance parole. Now, after May, Congress has decided that we're going to put EB5 in line with all the other employment-based categories like the EB1s, 2s, and so on. Okay. They said that if you're physically present in the US, then you can now apply for your green card at the same time as your EB5. So that means that if your I-526 still takes 2 to 3 years to get approved, if your green card is still going to take 2 to 3 years to come in, you still get your employment authorization and travel permit within 6 months. Essentially, that means that someone who needs to wait a long time can now travel and work freely in the US before their green card actually comes in.
Wonderful. So that's great news. And this will especially benefit people who are already in the US on non-immigrant visas, right? Like F1 visa, H1B visa.
Exactly. So an Indian right now who goes to the US has only very limited options. F1
Right.
visa is the most common way. You get an
Right.
I-20 from a university, you go and attend that school for the next 4 years, you may get a master's degree for 2 years. You have very limited work authorization throughout that period. It's tied to your studies, and often it's known as the OPT and the CPT.
Mm-hmm.
But after you graduate, what are your options? If you're an Indian in the US, after you graduate, what are your options? You often want to stay in the US and work and build your life in the US. That's the reason why you're there.
Right.
The majority of Indians will go for an H1B.
Right.
That means you need sponsorship from your employer, but most importantly, you have to go through the H1B lottery system every March.
Right.
That lottery system has hundreds of thousands of applicants and only 60,000 are chosen.
I see.
So if you're not picked in that lottery, then oftentimes you have to return back to back to India,
Okay.
and then try again year after year.
Right.
What EB5 has come in and done is that for those F1 students and those H1B visa holders who are financially secure and can do this, they can now invest into an EB5 project and get an employment authorization and travel permit within 6 months. That means the F1 student no longer needs to go for an F1 visa interview when they return home. They no
Okay.
longer need an I-20. They never have to go through the H1B lottery system. For that H1B holder, what that means is you're no longer tied to your employer.
Right.
We've seen so many tech layoffs in the US recently, in Silicon Valley and other parts. And if you're laid off from your H1B job, you have 60 days to either find another job or to leave the US where you've made your life.
Right.
The concurrent filing now, as soon as you file, you get to reside in the US.
Okay.
Within 3-4 months, you get employment authorization. Now you can work freely. You don't need an H1B employer, you don't need job sponsorships. You're given the same opportunities that any green card holder or US citizen has.
Wonderful. That's great news. So let's talk about the students first. The students who are studying in the US, the F1 visa holders. How will this concurrent filing benefit especially them? Will it increase their job opportunities? Will it help them in getting better placements on the campus? Will it help them in saving fees as students if they go for EB5? Can you explain about that?
Absolutely. If you're validly in the US on an F1 visa and you're attending school, what the concurrent filing now does is, let's say you want to switch schools, first of all. You don't need to go get another I-20 from that school.
All right.
You can now apply using your I-45 receipt notice.
Okay.
Now, if let's say you're in your junior or senior year of college,
Right.
you now no longer need the OPT or the CPT. You'll have what's called an employment authorization from the EB5.
All right.
That allows you to take an internship, paid or unpaid,
Okay.
wherever you want.
All
You
right.
can even work while you're in school with
Right.
that EAD card.
All right.
And as we discussed before, the general progression is that an F1 student goes for an H1B.
Right.
If you have your concurrent filing before you get to that stage, let's say before you graduate,
Right.
you no longer even have to think about H1B.
Wonderful.
You don't have to go through that lottery. You
Right.
don't have to find someone to sponsor you. You can go apply at any job that you want and truthfully say that you no longer need sponsorship because you have an EAD.
Right. Great. That's great. So one more question, Niral, we have been getting these questions from a lot of our clients whose children are studying in US, and that is that when you are actually studying and applying in the US and applying for internship or you are applying for a job, typically when you fill up the form, there are two questions: whether you need sponsorship, and generally if you select yes, you need sponsorship, most of the employers will set aside that application because very few are ready to sponsor. Is that true? And how will the EB5 with concurrent filing help them in this situation?
Yeah, I can't speak to every employer out there in the US and how
Yes.
they review these applications. But, it makes sense that if you no longer need sponsorship, that more employers are going to be open to taking you on employee, whether it's an internship, paid or unpaid. But it also means that now you as a student, you're not tied to a
Right.
particular employer.
Right.
Now you can look for opportunities even outside your area of studies.
Okay.
One other problem is that residency students, those who
Right.
come, medical students who come to the US on residency,
Right.
a lot of residency programs require at least employment authorization.
Right.
So if you get this concurrent filing and you get this EAD, then that opens you up to a lot more residency programs as well.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. So now, after you said that after your F1, the only way, the most popular way is to progress through H1B visa. So can you tell us more about H1B visa system? How does it work? How does the lottery system work? And what are your chances of getting H1B visa? And what happens in case you don't get your H1B visa?
Right, so like I said before, we're a full service immigration firm, so we also represent companies who use H1Bs a lot.
Right.
H1Bs used to be extremely popular amongst, and still is amongst Indians, amongst
Right.
Indian nationals. It requires a job offer from a US employer who qualifies as an H1B employer, and it also requires you to go through a lottery system.
Right.
A lottery system is exactly that.
Right.
There is more demand than there is supply for H1B visas. So
Right.
every March of every year, a company will register how many people they would like on the H1B
Right.
payroll. Then the US government runs a lottery, and then if your name is picked, then only then do you even get to apply for the H1B visa.
Right.
And then once it's approved, you get to start later that year for that H1B employer.
Right.
I don't know the statistics off the top of my head, but usually around a few 100,000 people apply,
Uh-huh.
and only 60,000 visas are available.
Oh, that's chances are quite less. There are only 60,000 and hundreds and thousands of people are applying for that.
Yeah, and then we take it one step further. The reason why someone is doing H1B is because they ultimately want to live permanently in the US.
Right.
So the natural progression from an H1B to a green card is an EB2. We'll be discussing EB5.
Right.
This is the EB2 visa.
Right.
Currently the wait time, and you can check this on the visa bulletin that's published by the State Department every year.
Right.
Currently the wait time on an EB2 is well over 20 to 30 years,
I see.
which means that before you get your green card, 20 or 30 years must have passed. You need that priority date to become current.
All right.
What the EB5 now does is that you'll get your EAD in 3-4 months.
Okay.
You'll get your travel permit in 6 months.
Okay.
Now you no longer need that EB2.
All right.
Now you don't even need your H1B anymore.
All right.
And you'll most likely get your conditional green card in 3-4 years. Even if there's a visa backlog, let's say there is a backlog for the EB5 and it takes longer, then you still get those core green card benefits of employment authorization and travel permit, which you can keep extending until you're issued your green card.
Wonderful. So this extension of EAD and the travel card, does it happen automatically, or there are some conditions to be met for that?
I wouldn't necessarily say conditions. The EAD and the advanced parole, which is the travel permit, they're approved using very basic biographical information.
Right.
So the EAD will most likely be issued for 2 years. The travel permit sometimes 2 years, but most likely 1 year.
Right.
And then 6 months before they expire, you file an extension.
Right.
And you'll get that easily.
Right. So what this means is that you can continue to stay in the US and get most of the benefits of a green card while your I-526 petition is being processed.
Exactly. You're getting the core green card benefits. The reason why anyone wants a green card is the freedom to travel and the freedom to work.
Right.
Now you have those almost immediately within 6 months.
Right. So I think that's something, great news for all the F1 visa holders, H1B visa holders in the US. Have you seen, what is the trend? Have you seen a lot of people going for EB5 post this announcement?
I would say the demand has been high. The demand has been much higher, and the reason is because of the concurrent filing, especially within the F1 and the H1 Indian community within the US. Like I said before, there were a lot of tech layoffs.
Right.
So people are nervous about being H1B holders, being employed in the tech industry or whatever it may be. But now with the EB5 concurrent filing, if you're laid off from your job, you don't have to leave the US.
Okay.
Once you filed your EB5 concurrent filing, you don't need to leave the US. And then you may be out of work for a little bit until you get that work permit, but as soon as you get that work permit, you can go right back to work.
Right. Will this allow me, will the EAD allow me to work for my own company? Can I set up my own business and continue working living in the US?
That's a good question. It's an unrestricted EAD.
Right.
What that means is that you can do basically what any other green card holder or US citizen can. You can set up your own business, you can work for someone, you can have multiple jobs.
Yeah.
You don't even have to work if you don't want to. Because of filing the concurrent filing, you get to remain in the US. So even if you don't want to work, you can remain in the US.
Right. So the concurrent filing gives you complete freedom to stay in the US. You can stay there as long as you want. You can continue to work. You can switch job. You can, not work if you don't wish to, or you can start your own business.
Yeah.
Right? Wonderful.
And then one really common question that I get is from H1B holders. Right. And they say, okay, well, I'm on an H1B. If I do the concurrent filing, what happens to my H1B status?
That's right.
The good news is that the H1B is what we call a dual intent visa.
Right.
Which means you can have the intent to temporarily work on an H1B.
Right.
And also have the intent to pursue a permanent residence green card.
Right.
So the two processes do not conflict. So you can maintain your H1B job and have the EB5, still get your EAD, still maintain your H1B, you can travel on that H1B, and then come back to the US, do whatever you want. Now let's say you're laid off, or you want to start a new business or change jobs, now you have your EAD in your back pocket as your plan B.
Right, so wonderful. So even for H1B visa holders, the EB5, with concurrent filing makes sense because it works as a backup plan, and also it speeds up the process of getting a green card. They can get a green card in about 2 to 3 years instead of waiting for 20 to 30 years.
Exactly.
Wonderful. All right, so that was a lot of valuable information that we have received. Any last word for our viewers over here?
As a firm, we believe on, being on the ground in all the various countries that we travel to. I continue to come back to India to meet with clients face to face, to meet with skilled immigration consultants like Paresh to really educate on EB5, the benefits on EB5, and as we get into it, the source of funds, the processes, and the timelines.
All right. So friends, I hope you found this informative and useful. Thank you very much. Thank you, Niral, for being with us and sharing all the information. It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.